With the unmitigated disaster that was the Sega Saturn, Sega was looking forward to the future. So in 1998 in Japan and 1999 worldwide, Sega released their last console and my personal favourite console of all time. So sit back and enjoy my closer look at the Sega Dreamcast. This, in my opinion, is a truly sexy console with 4 controller ports on the front of the system, allowing for great local multiplayer. On the top of the console you have a power button, an open button for the disc tray, and obviously the disc tray itself, but also you have the iconic Sega Dreamcast swirl. In power regions this was blue, and in NTSC regions it was an orange swirl. On the back of the system, you have a standard AC power port, as well as a serial port, which would allow you to connect devices such as the Neo Geo Pocket, which would unlock certain features in some games, such as Capcom vs SNK. You also have an AV port on the back, which can support resolutions up to 480p with the use of a VGA box, or you could use standard cables such as RGB SCART cables, composite and S-video cables. The unique feature of the console was the fact that in Western regions it came with a 56k modem, allowing for online play with games such as Quake 3 Arena and Phantasy Star Online. You could also purchase a broadband adapter later on, which would allow for much faster internet connections. Inside the Sega Dreamcast, it is powered by an Hitachi SH4, which is a 32-bit RISC processor clocked at 200 MHz. You also have 16MB of system RAM alongside 8MB of video RAM and 2MB of audio RAM. Talking about the graphics, the Dreamcast used a 100 MHz Power VR2 for the graphics, which was built in with the CPU, as well as the sound, which was powered by a 64MHz Yamaha Aika chip. Games on the system are on GD-ROMs, which size-wise are the same as normal CDs, but can allow for a much greater capacity, with most games being over 1GB. The only thing with the disc drive, they are very temperamental and are known for failing. So you can get what's known as a GD-ROM emulator, which can use SD cards or USB sticks, which are much more reliable but do require you to create your own backups to put onto the SD card. Well, let's look at the controllers and other devices you can use with the Sega Dreamcast. This is a very decisive controller. You either love it or you hate it. Personally, I love it. With one analog stick, a D-pad and 4 face buttons, as well as a start button, and on the rear of the controller you're having 2 trigger buttons and a place to attach the cable, as the cable was unfortunately though hardwired to the bottom of the controller and would require you to loop it around so it is out of the way. And on the top of the system you had 2 expansion ports, which were used for memory cards and rumble packs, as well as even a voice, a microphone, which was used with Siemens. And talking about memory cards, we've got to obviously mention the VMU, or Visual Memory Card Unit. A memory card with a screen on it, as well as some controls on there as well. So in games, this would allow you to either see ammo count, the game logo, or just some little animation. While in some games, when saved to the memory card, you could play like little Tamagotchi style games, for example like in Sonic Adventure with the Chow Chow Gardens as well. Other accessories on the system though included a mouse and a keyboard, because it did have internet functionality and that is a much better way of using it. And some of the first person shooter games on the system did use the mouse and keyboard, which is a much better control method for it. Much better than trying to use the actual controller, because with it on like one analog stick rather than two, it can sometimes get a bit exhausting. A light gun for shooting games. There are a wide variety of these. You've either got the official Sega Saturn one, or you've got third party ones. For example, as you see here, I have got this weird one that I can find very little information on, which is a Desert Eagle, and it has recoil in it and everything. You could even get fight and arcade sticks as well for fighting games, and you could even get special controllers released by ASCII for fighting games on the system like King of Fighters and Street Fighter. Games on the Dreamcast came on GD-ROMs. Very much like CDs, the only difference is that a GD-ROM can hold up to 1 GB of data. As for the cases for the games in NTSC regions such as Japan and North America came in standard dual CD cases, while the PAL regions had their own proprietary CD cases, which are a lot more flimsy, a lot more delicate, but personally do stand out a bit more, and they are a bit thicker, and each case is actually a dual CD case as well. One of the great things about the Dreamcast is being able to play any region game on the system, either by purchasing an Action Replay CD off eBay, one of the free ones that came with a magazine, which are relatively cheap, or use an import loader like DCX or Utopia. I tend to use the DCX as it seems to be the most reliable and does have options to boot into various video modes such as VGA, RGB SCART or Composite S-Video. So, hope you enjoyed the rundown of the system and the accessories that you can get with it as well. Just a few things to note though about the Sega Dreamcast. Some of the online functionality is still around, and you can use what's known as a Dream Pi, which is a Raspberry Pi emulation software for the networking. So you can get online still and play some of the online games, and they are still Fantasy Star Online, Clans still going on, Unreal Tournament, as well as Quake 3 Arena as well. Other things that I'd like to mention though with the system as well, there are some great mods for the system, such as a HDMI inbuilt upscaler for it as well. And one of the things that I personally would recommend everyone do with their Dreamcast is very simple. You need little to no soldering skills for this. Is there's a battery to keep time in the system on the board, which has the controller ports on there. It's very simple to remove. I would recommend upgrading that, and you can get a nice little holder which can just put the rechargeable like coin cell batteries in, and it's a bit easier for when they die. Rather than having to desolder it again, you can just take the battery out and replace it with a new one. And I would recommend doing that. It's a nice simple mod to do there as well. But yeah, Dreamcast is one of my favourite consoles of all time. It's a console which about 95% of the games are fantastic, or 5%, but talking about games, one thing that I'd like to bring up is it's got some great third-party support on there, and I will hopefully be able to show some of that in this video when I show more of the games. The only third-party developer that I didn't have was Electronic Arts, and that was due to a disagreement between EA and Sega, because Sega wanted to still release their 2K line of sports games, while EA wanted Sega not to release them and just release like your FIFAs, your Maddens and various things like that. So there is no games by Electronic Arts on this console as well. Games are still being developed for it actually. One of the newer games I got, which came out a couple of years ago for the system, was PS Solar. And they did a really good HD upgrade pack for it for the Dreamcast as well, and it looks beautiful. And I'll maybe show that in the video coming up. But enough of that, let's start looking at some games. One of the first games I would like to show to you is Jet Set Radio, or as the rest of the world knows it as, Jet Grind Radio. In this game you can control one of 3 skaters to choose from. You skate around Tokyo To, a fictionalised version of Tokyo, tagging streets to reclaim the city for your own, and to reclaim land from rival skater gangs. The gameplay consists of skating around an area and collecting spray cans, so you can spray walls in a very quick minigame. The game has been compared to the Tony Hawk series of games, which I believe is a bit of disservice to the game, as yes, you do move around very similar in the way of the control scheme, but it's more about, rather than getting like a high score, it's more about trying to get a nice seamless rhythm going on with jumping and grinding and getting a good flow going to get around town and tagging at the various spots. You'll also come across police members who will launch tear gas or chase after you trying to shoot you. In some stages you must chase after other gangs, and after catching them you can complete a trial of sorts which will unlock more characters for you to use in your roster. And each character has their own different stats as well. Some might have more health, some might be faster, some might have more technique when doing the graffiti style of it. Tagging in the game, or doing the graffiti, is done by pressing the R button at a designated spot and using the analog stick in a rhythm type minigame. In the game though, the 2 most striking features of the game are the cel-shaded graphics, which give it a very nice animated comic book style presence, and the use of music in the game with a mix of J-pop, rap, hip-hop, electro, rock and jazz gets the player pumped in the game and overall makes the game very unique. Overall though, the game is a solid entry for any Dreamcast collector and can be found very easily at a low price, normally between 10 to 20 quid. The fighting game genre was well represented on the system, like mentioned with Capcom, porting some of their arcade fighters like Street Fighter all for free, Marvel vs Capcom, Capcom vs SNK, and even 3D fighters like Tech Romancer. Other fighting games on the system include Dead or Alive 2, aka Tekken with boob physics, and even SNK bringing some of the King of the Fighters games to the system. But one of the standout fighting games on the system in my eyes would be Soul Calibur, a weapons-based fighter where you have a roster of 20 characters, some of them having to be unlocked through playing the arcade mode or survival mode. And also you have an adventure mode which you must travel around the world completing different tasks, so fighting with matches with a certain rule set, like only being able to grab. Graphically the game looks amazing, and the reason why it's a stand-up title is this game is often cited as how powerful the system is, with a perfect 1-to-1 comparison with the arcade version of the game. Again, this game is very easy to come by and isn't that expensive. Again, can be bought around about the same price on sales, Jet Set Radio in my eyes, from about £10 to £20. Another game I'd like to show you is the Japanese exclusive release of Undercover AD 2025 Kai. This is a third-person action game, very similar to Resident Evil with the use of tank controls and having to aim before you can fire, or set your weapon before you can shoot. In the game though, you play as a female police officer who is going after what I believe is a crime syndicate. One of the unique features though of this game is sometimes when you go up behind enemies, and if you catch them off guard and just quickly draw your gun before firing, they will put their hands up and they will give you ammo or some medkits. You can even do this though when fighting an enemy. Like, you'll notice at some points you'll shoot them and then they'll like start, you know, have their hand on the body or something like that. Quickly press the R button to fire again, but without firing, just gently do it, and then it'll hold them up and they'll again maybe give you items, ammo or health. In the game though, you don't really have though a wide variety of weapons. You only have 3 handguns ranging in power, as well as an Uzi, which would be your automatic weapon in the game, or a shotgun as well. You were also equipped though with a baton, which can be used if you are out of ammo, which in the beginning of the second part of the game, you actually don't have a gun, so you have to use the baton. But you can roll around, avoid enemy fire, and then use the baton to hit them, which will make them give up and maybe give you some ammo as well. One aspect though of the game which I like is the fact that you can go from third person to third person in a button press, which I do recommend using the first person mode for when you do have feeling there's going to be a lot of enemies around, and then you'll be able to strafe in and out and get a nice good look, and it seems to be a bit more accurate when firing, even though the aiming is automatic. The downsides to the game though, which there are many, because it's not a perfect game after all, it's just a game that I like, is that the game can feel very stiff with the controls. They are not fluid at all, and it can seem quite jerky at times, and in some instances make the game infuriating to play. And also the fact that the game is in Japanese with no English translation job done to the game. But if you are interested in playing this game, I recommend, if you get stuck on any part, there's a YouTube long play, like split into parts, which can help you if you're a bit confused. But also use Google Translate on a smartphone with the camera mode on that, because that's pretty good for actually picking up some of the Japanese on there. So, like for items and various things, like you think, right, yep, it's got that now, I understand what I meant to use that item for. Even with the language barrier though, I believe the game is worth picking up. You can find this on eBay though for about £10 to £13, and as I said, it's not perfect, but it's a game that I'm actually enjoying at the moment, and I want to show to a wider audience. So, I hope you enjoyed them few games there that I quickly showed. Just going to show a few more games, just in a quick fire succession, so sit back and enjoy.
Trust
So that's the end of the video there. So yeah, Sega Dreamcast. Again, as mentioned, one of my favourite consoles of all time. A lot of good games on it as well to choose from. Those just a small selection of them. And with the easily availability of being able to play regional lots games, so games for £100 in America, it opens up your library for so much. Prices for the games are starting to creep up just a little bit though, because it's starting to become a bit more collectible, and the consoles are now starting to die. But again, with the mods mentioned, so stuff like the DC HDMI and the GD-ROM drives that GD-ROM emulator drives that you can coax new life into it as well. And yeah, I would recommend anyone who is interested in getting one, just get one. Console wise, can be a bit dearer now, looking about 30 to 50 quid depending. I always recommend spend that a little bit more trying to get a bundle with some games, extra controllers, some memory cards as well. And the games that I've shown are actually good starting points for a Dreamcast collection as well, and getting 100% collection is doable, because it was only around a couple of years, and if you're going for like, you know, a full UK set or a full US set, it's easily done. Japanese, going to be a lot more difficult to do a complete set there. But yeah, that's Sega Dreamcast. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like it if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it. If you've got any memories of the Dreamcast, or you know, any games that you think I should have shown, feel free to pop them in the comment section below. If you want to see more videos like this, I know it's taken a while to get this video out, but with work and everything like that, I really got around to doing a lot of video capturing and editing and recording, so just bear that in mind if you are subscribing. Videos aren't often, but when they come, I do try my hardest to make them as good as possible with my limited skills. And yeah, feel free to share this on social media, so Twitter, Facebook, even through YouTube if you wanted. And yeah, that's it. So, as I say at the end of every video, keep on gaming.